Teammates, can you hear me? Is this on? All right, good. So, welcome. How you doing? Good. Well, welcome to Tech Talks next, right? This is the next Tech Talks. How many had a chance to attend the Tech Talks previously? Great. Good to see so many of you coming back, and I'm really anxious to hear from those folks that are new here that haven't had that opportunity. So the whole reason behind Tech Talks is try to give the entire enterprise kind of an idea of what we're using as it relates to technology to kind of advance the ball down the field, to get after a lot of these major critical initiatives that we have going on. And you may or may not know that we've got 5 critical ones. There's a whole lot more initiatives that are going on. And I know you know that from within your directorates and your divisions. There's a whole lot more going on than just these 5. But we want to cover these 5 just to give you an idea, give you an update, give you kind of a visual and an update from each of the initiative leads on where we stand, and kind of give you, I'm kind of a stick figure kind of guy. I need to see pictures to really understand things, you know, so this is going to kind of help you and help the enterprise kind of understand where we're going with these initiatives and using innovative tools to get there. So before we get started, what I'd like for you to do, you've got a survey that they handed out. If you'd fill out the top portion of that survey, the whole portion of that is to kind of see where you are in your knowledge of what we're going to talk about, how we're doing at communicating those things to the workforce. And then at the very end of this, we're going to ask you to fill out the bottom part of that survey as well. So I'll just give you a couple minutes. And just give me a couple head nods if you look like you're done. If you had a chance to finish it, you're good to go. Good. You did homework in advance, right? You guys did this early, so. But this is just a great opportunity. Like I said, I really appreciate the initiative leads for continuously being willing to come out, because they're already extremely busy with their day job, and to come out and update us. So, okay, we good to go on those surveys? All right, great. So first off, I'd like to introduce, this is going to be, we're going to go at 90 minutes total. Each of the initiative leads are going to get about 10 minutes to talk about it, their particular initiatives, update us on where they are, and then spend about 5 minutes taking questions from the audience as well as in DCS land. So for those that are joining us on DCS, I welcome you as well. So don't be shy. Ask questions. The whole opportunity here is for you to get clarity. So if you're thinking about something and you're confused about something, or you just have this burning desire to learn something different about that particular initiative, please take the opportunity now to get those questions out. If at the end of the day we have still not answered your questions on those particular initiatives, please feel free to go on Ask Us Anything, and we'll get you the answer from that particular initiative lead. Or you can just email me directly and we'll make sure that we get you the answer, because we owe you an answer on where we're going with this. So I just welcome you once again today, and I appreciate your time. So first of all, we're going to start off with Sprint to the Cloud. So one of the first initiatives after I first got here a year and a half ago, man, that seems like yesterday, but was Sprint to the Cloud. And at one point, we thought it was going to take a couple of years to get there. Well, General McDew, as you know, was pushing the gas pedal pretty hard and engaged the team to work faster on the Sprint to the Cloud initiative. So Sprint to the Cloud is one of the 5. So you have Sprint to the Cloud, Big Data, the Transportation Management System, our Defense Personal Property System as well, and the GOC, the Global Operations Center. So lots of work has gone on that. But we're going to start with Sprint to the Cloud, and that's going to be Colonel Ivan Herwick here to talk about Sprint to the Cloud. So. And he's already substituted that down. Yeah, so great delegation, very nice. So, all right, well, thanks a lot.
Welcome. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, my brother.
All right, good morning, everybody. Everybody hear me all right? Good. All right, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Scott Buchtold. I'm in the J6C, leading up the DevOps initiatives under the Sprint to the Cloud effort. So kind of what we're going to do here, I'm going to kind of speed through some of these slides up front here so you can see some of the pictures that the chief was relaying to. We really wanted to bring a demo up here, but what I want to highlight is that we are doing every other week town hall meetings that actually do live demos of the stuff We can't really do those in the 10-minute time frame that's allotted today, but you know, if you're not familiar with those town halls that we're doing, we're getting that out to our component reps, and they should be distributing that to everybody. So the next one is this Thursday in the McCutcheon at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to be going over some of the standards that we're driving in the cloud. So this picture here, just to highlight the initiative that we started here. Again, most everybody knows that we have a lot of on-prem infrastructure with data centers. That on-prem infrastructure drives a lot of limitations in our redundancy and use for our mission partners. You know, we don't always get the full redundancy that we want or can budget for, and it limits our ability for our customers. As we move to the cloud, it's going to enable a lot of that, a lot of more redundancy and mission assurance as we build it out and take advantage of the capabilities there. And so what you can kind of see on the right hand of the slide there is multiple data centers. We abstract away a lot of that infrastructure. We rely on our industry partner cloud provider to provide that infrastructure for us to where we don't have to worry about managing that, budgeting it for it from a military government perspective. And ultimately that enables us to focus more on the applications and the features that they provide. Again, the cloud is the enabler of all this. It's going to provide that mission assurance, resiliency, and security that drove us down this path. But we have to take advantage of the technologies and what we can do from using DevOps methodologies and stuff like that. And what that's going to allow us to do is shift a lot of responsibilities all the way to the left where we want to design it in the systems from the get-go, using technologies like infrastructure as code. So instead of actually configuring servers constantly and spending a lot of our time doing the manual configurations, we can drive that into code and provide consistency across multiple environments no matter where I'm standing it up. Again, our strategy is to reduce that IT footprint that we're providing in there. And I don't want to go too down in the weeds on this, but again, we're following the DISA's secure cloud computing architecture, so we have that solid security framework around what we're doing in the cloud to support the POR migrations. And again, we're focusing on providing some core enterprise services and DevOps services that allow a lot of self-service capabilities all the way to the left in the software development lifecycle. And again, we provide those services as well to the other initiatives, TMS and big data. So what I want to get into here, though, is kind of some of the methodologies of DevOps that we're following. Again, it's really following some kind of modular Lego block kind of methodologies here. So what we truly focus on, you'll really only see 3 main blocks on here: building, compiling your code, deploying it, and testing it. What the cloud allows us to do is do that consistently because we're doing it as code, and then we can deploy it in multiple environments. So that's kind of what this is highlighting here. So again, that top block as build, again, it's hard to see there, but that's doing your coding of your software application, whatever that is. The next step is actually deploying it using code to actually deploy, no kidding, hardware infrastructure and servers consistently across multiple environments. And what you see is a development environment, a staging environment, production, and then a partner and test environments that we can use. But we can deploy the same code identically across all 4 or even more environments. And then lastly is actually starting to take advantage of the automation of being able to test your code and how it stands up. And we'll kind of show that in some of the follow-on slides here. Just one note on the red arrows here that we've added in as well. Again, when we talk about shift to the left methodologies, if you have a problem that happens in your staging or production environments, we're not fixing things out there anymore. We are actually taking that back because it's all code. We take it all the way back to the left. We change that code, whether it's software code or infrastructure code. So you're no longer having system administrators modifying your systems in production. We are pulling all that back. That is the idea. That's how we're going to take advantage of the cloud, is by changing our methodologies around that, all the way down to our server infrastructure level and our operating systems and stuff like that. Today, that's a lot of manual activity that occurs in our on-prem data centers. again, this is kind of another depiction of that, but what we wanted to focus on here is that our goal is to build all that code at once. We store it in a centralized repository, and what we have depicted up here is the repository that we're using today is a technology called GitLab. That stores all of our source code. We have one source code repository in the cloud environment that everybody is going to be checking their code into. From there, it initiates your build steps of your code, compiling that code. The output of that is then into a artifact repository, which again, we're using the technology called Artifactory. And we'll show you that a little bit more here in a minute. And then once it hits in Artifactory, then we actually pick where we're going to deploy that code at in that infrastructure. And we use some environmental parameters that are coded as well to allow us to go into multiple environments, multiple cloud environments, depending on where you're at in your program development or migration. Again, the key note to take out of this is that everything is truly code in this environment. So kind of what we want to show is some of that self-service capability here. So this is kind of, this is where we're starting as kind of a front end to our cloud environment from a DevOps methodology. So what you see here is kind of a splash screen of what is going to be served up when our developers or our administrators are actually getting into the cloud environment using our virtual desktop infrastructure that we're enabling for them. Once you get to this screen, you can see we can launch off to some of those tools that I discussed a little bit earlier. But this is kind of that starting of that self-service capability. So, you know, wherever you're at in your process, you can pick, I need to go to the repository to update my code, I need to go check my pipelines, or I need to go and Fortify and test and check some of my scan results, and that could be your security team. But this is kind of that front page self-service capability that we're providing for the team. And this is slowly getting built out. We're going to have more capabilities just evolving into this website. And I apologize, these are, you know, can't see a lot of this, but what we wanted to show here is, so this is actually a screen capture out of the GitLab of CPA's code, and if you, we'll get the slides out here, but you can see that as change is being made in here of the code. What you don't see, and we'll show in the next slides, is that change in this code actually triggers some automation to actually start the build and the deployment process in the cloud. And so that's what I'm going to show you next here. But again, it's all driven and linked off of automation. So what happens, and this is a display out of Jenkins. Jenkins is an orchestration software tool that actually picks up that code change through the automation in the cloud and starts the build process. And I wish you could kind of see this a little bit more. But those blocks that I showed on the first couple slides, right here, it actually does say build, deploy, and test. What happens is this is about a 15 to 20 minute process when you submit that code change to actually show that it's actually compiling your application, in this case the CPA application. The second green dot there is actually deploying it into the dev infrastructure in the cloud, their dev environment, building up servers, installing the CPA code application on top of it. And then the last one is actually kicking off the Fortify scans. So a lot of people have heard about our Fortify scans and how you have to do that every time you go to production and monitor all your security compliance of your code and the quality of it and everything. So we're trying to simplify that so it happens every time. And then our enterprise security teams are actually monitoring those scan results, or will be monitoring those when we get them enabled. So this kind of shows that pipeline step of build and deploy and a little bit of that testing capability, and it's all orchestrated with automation. So I know I'm blowing through this a little bit fast, but again, as a developer now, they can actually click on any one of these steps very quickly, see where they're at in their process, see where their error's at. If they find an error, they go back and they update that code. And then once they check it back in, this process kicks back off again. This is a very simple pipeline. What I'm going to show you next is actually when we get a little bit more complicated. So what I want to show you here is this is where we're driving to. So this is actually a pipeline of code or an orchestration for the Artifactory repository that we built. And this is actually displaying the deployment of that. But what we've done is we've done some coding in here to actually allow us to pass parameters. Those parameters dictate what type of environment I'm going to deploy our repository into. And you can see there's a dev environment, a prod environment, and a staging environment that we can do. This pipeline kicked off, and you see we have all the green checks there, denoting that it was successful, but we deployed this into the dev environment, making sure we hit all those proper testing steps and everything. So, and these are actually screen captures out of the environment. I know some of the folks in here have already been able to see some of this stuff as well, I'm hoping, with our team. And then we are doing one-on-one sessions with every program to walk them through on how to do this as we're enabling their dev environments. So. Again, from a code perspective, this is actually the code view of that pipeline that I just showed. And what I want to show in here is actually, we're actually providing the parameters within this code, and you can swap those out to what pipelines, or to what environments you want to deploy that code to. So this is the depiction of how it does that. And you can see the parameters are right over here on the side. You can click through them, and then you can update them, you know, because each environment you deploy to, we all know there's a little bit of difference to those environments, so you got to program in a little bit of that code. Additionally, as we do that, every time you guys make code changes as well, what we realize is all that is version controlled in our repositories. So every time you make a change to your source code, we have that version control, and then because we're having one code repository for the entire environment, the government now has ultimate control of the source code of all applications in one area that is fully backed up in the cloud as well. So no longer do we have to say, you know, ask a PM, hey, where's my source code? Well, we have everybody's right here, all version controlled, all backed up, you know, ready to go in the cloud. The developers out in their offsite, they're no longer emailing source code to the PMs as a project deliverable. They're just say, hey, version, you know, 1.x is loaded into GitLab. Again, here's another kind of view of when you click on one of those. So these are the actual parameters as code for deploying Artifactory into the dev environment. Again, I'm not going to go into the details here, but for you tech folks that really like to dig into the code, here's kind of where it's at. For the people that are more picture-oriented, we actually can actually turn that code and use visualization tools to actually display. So this is actually what our Artifactory server and database looks like using a CloudFormation template and visualized in Amazon's CloudFormer tool. But it takes that visualization, and now we can have those artifacts as well from that perspective. So, and the nice thing you can see here, you know, here's my actual server. All these dots and everything denote the code that actually builds that server. You have the security groups around various parts of those. You have your database and your database subnet up there. And then you can click on that, on actually these box in the Amazon environment, and you can actually pull up that code, you can actually modify it, and then you can resubmit it to GitLab, and then it triggers, again, those automation pipelines that we're building. So that's really all I had from a demonstration, kind of showing you guys some of the screen captures of the tools that we're using. What kind of questions do you guys have about the environment? I know I'm only hitting the DevOps side of it. There's many more aspects. There's the costing piece of it. Just, you know, the managed services piece. How do I engage with the managed services team, requesting services, requesting accounts? We're not getting into all that, but what I do want to say is that we are having a lot of those discussions in the town hall through the component reps with the CCOE and everything as well, but drive those questions into us.
So is this the view from behind the curtain?
Yes.
Me as a historian, I'm not going to see any of this, right?
No.
Please tell me no.
No. You will definitely not.
This is, if I look at my screen and it's doing what I want, that's what's doing what I want.
Yes, yep, this is what's building the, for this example here, it's building a repository database that the developers and the system administrators are actually checking their code into. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a front end of DPS, where you would log in or something like that. So as a user, you will never see any of this stuff. Yep. Yes, sir.
So the idea of the cloud basically eliminates the need for a COOP, is that right? And then also, does it allow us to, if there's a problem in some of the code, can you just roll back?
Yes.
Right?
So from a COOP perspective, what the cloud offers is multiple data centers at a very cheap rate to actually install your code in. So what I showed is, 3 different environments. Those are actually different data centers around the Amazon infrastructure that code is installed in. What it does, it abstracts you away from worrying about a specific building on Scott Air Force Base or one out of a DISA deck or something like that. We don't have to really worry about that. As a program manager, you have to define what is the resiliency that I require for my application. So certain static websites, I don't care that they're replicated all around the world potentially because I don't have that big a user base. But other applications that are, require that high availability, again, we would design the code around that, and you would actually see, if we required it for this, I could actually show on this picture that there'd be multiple data centers that this application would be installed in. The other thing you don't see really on here is that understanding that these storage buckets here from an Amazon perspective, they're doing a lot of that redundancy for you as well. So Amazon provides you a lot of redundancy that you don't have to really worry about to a degree. So some points you do, some you don't, So does that help a little bit? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Lieutenant Commander Teeter, J54. My question is, do you have any sort of technology lock to a specific vendor or solution? Meaning, if AWS doesn't work out, we want to move to a different cloud vendor, is the architecture set up so that it's easy to move from one vendor to another, and we find ourselves in another big project where we have Sprint to the cloud 2.0, Sprint to a different?
Okay. So there are some legal aspects to that answer, and then there are some other aspects. So from a legal aspect, we are not locked into a single cloud vendor. So we can take our code and take it wherever we want. But just like I showed on, if I go back here, maybe, come on. So what we've done is, so when you look at from our Dev Services portal site where you're navigating tools, I'm using tools like GitLab. Well, GitLab is a vendor tool, right? And I've installed that in the Amazon environment. I can actually pull out that repository and install it somewhere else. There is work that's required to do that. The amount of work, hopefully, is a little bit less. But again, as we use Amazon, there are certain services within Amazon that are unique to Amazon as well. So as we pull things out, there will be some work to rework whatever specific unique services of Amazon that we've initiated. But again, from the automation and the DevOps, we've picked a lot of tools, and you'll see Jenkins and Confluence and Jira, Artifactory. All these tools we can pull out of that Amazon environment and then launch it in another environment as well. There is time to do that. But again, it's code, so we should be able to do it at a faster pace than we do today if we have to lift an entire DoD data center and put it somewhere else.
If I can put words in your mouth, it'd be Sprint to the cloud like.
Sprint to the cloud like?
Like.
Yeah, light. I don't know about that per se.
There would be work, but it wouldn't be anything on the order of magnitude.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So a lot of it is changing our culture around a DevOps methodology. So yeah, you could use that if we had to change a vendor out. So, and that's always a possibility with our contracting requirements that we're made to deal with. Let's see, I can't see the clock there, so I don't know how I'm doing on time, but yes, sir.
As many of the planning systems are on the classified realm,
Yep.
when will there be a classified?
So there are already some instantiations of classified commercial clouds, and I call them commercial, but from commercial vendors out there already. Really the intelligence community is driving that. What's that? When do we go? So where we're currently at, we don't have a contract to drive us to the classified, but we are working that with our next production contract in the AQ team, which we'll see some more contracting activity, hopefully in the January timeframe, that'll start enabling us to use those commercial offerings, the classified offerings. So, but the nice thing about that is a lot of the programs that have a classified footprint also have an unclassified footprint. So again, getting that code and starting to use this methodologies is really what's ideal in changing that culture around the cloud, and then we can actually just, transfer that code up to classified, make some parameter changes to it, and then install it. So we should be able to do a lot of the work ahead of time before those contracts are let, is kind of what I'm saying. And most of your programs went from a classified development perspective. They don't actually develop their classified code. It's really the data that's classified. So we can do a lot of that code development on the unclassified commercial environments. So, yep. Cool. I think that's about all of my 15 minutes. I'm getting the thumbs up here. I'm not getting the hook yet. So if there's no other questions, please feel free. Every component has a rep within the CCOE. And most of your programs know who that is. So drive those questions to those component reps. They will get them into the CCOE to Colonel Herwick and myself, and we'll try and answer them as we can. So again, this was just a small take on just the DevOps portion of the cloud. There's many more aspects that we haven't hit yet. So cool. I think with that, I'm handing over to Major Schiffner for the data team.
Mike, if you can flip the inputs in the back, please. So, good morning, Transcom. Oh, we can do better than that. Good morning, Transcom. Good morning. All right, okay. So, my name is Major Ryan Schiffner. The distinguished colleague to my right is Mr. Denny Benson. We're both from the J6 Data Center of Excellence, and we're here to talk to you about the about Sprint to Big Data. First off, who has direct experience with big data? Okay, I'm going to rephrase the question. Who here has used Google? Who here has used Amazon? Who here has used Netflix? All right, that's basically one and the same. Those are great examples of companies that are leveraging big data in order to provide you with different services, different offerings. If you're not familiar with big data, or if you weren't at some of the previous tech talks, let me give you kind of an example. If we were to ask a university professor to define big data, what you're seeing on the screen behind me might be the answer you get. We're looking at a couple of different things that are going on here. One, you're capturing data. Two, you're cleansing that data. Three, you're managing that data. And four, you're analyzing that data. And we're talking about big data sets, meaning big in volume, big in complexity, big in velocity, the pace at which the data is flying at you. And the whole reason you're doing this is to be able to gain insights so you can make better decisions and faster decisions on behalf of your organization. So let's go back to Netflix kind of to put some context around that. First off, do we have any Star Trek fans in the room? Yeah, we got some. So if you're one of the guys that's watched every single Star Trek film that's out there, Netflix as a company is gathering that data. They're gathering your viewing preferences. They're gathering your ratings. They're gathering your browsing history and identifying you as a Trekkie. Then they're able to take that data, they capture it, they cleanse it, they manage it, and they're able to gather that, analyze it, compare you to all of the thousands of other Trekkies that are out there and their viewing habits, and then proactively feed you content that they think you're going to like. And the larger the volume of data, the more accurate they get. This is all designed so they can be better and faster than their competition in providing you with content that you like, so you keep paying that subscription to Netflix. So how are we doing this at Transcom? If JDPAC and J6 are currently tag teaming something called a proof of principle. We are on day 104 of a 120-day proof of principle. The objective of that proof of principle is to build a prototype enterprise data environment, an EDE. An EDE is basically a big, massive data repository, an authoritative data repository where everything goes. And when you need data, that's what you go to and reach into and grab it. So what you see on the slide behind me, go ahead and click to the next one, please, is an example of some of the data that currently resides inside that enterprise data environment. What I want you to notice is the diversity of the data sources. Some of those systems you might recognize, some maybe not. And then I want you to look at the volume. We're looking at about 5 total terabytes that we've been able to pull in just the last 104 days. All right, next slide. And then where does all that data go? So this is a visual depiction of what the enterprise data environment looks like. Denny's going to walk you through the next several steps and the rest of the enterprise data environment.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Major Shifter. I truly appreciate that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rebuild that slide, but also show you some of the software products that go into that as well. So as the cloud team showed you, we have the Amazon Web Services GovCloud, and we have the Transcom Cloud inside of that. And then a subset of that is the enterprise data environment that Major Shifter basically described. They talked eloquently about the different security levels associated with this. Now, I did get a laugh out of General Alliance when I said that Slidemanship shows that these are subsets. The EDE is not 90% of the Amazon Web Services GovCloud, okay? It's a much smaller subset, but just for viewing purposes, you can see that. So working from the bottom up, we have different portions of the EDE to work with. We start with the data layer, and there are 2 software products. I'm going to show you one of them here in just a moment. StreamSets does data ingestion, integration, cleansing, and enrichment. And Cloudera has a software program called Navigator that relates to metadata. These are a lot of J6 principles that we need to do for data governance and data quality. We all learned in CompSci 101, probably in the first 15 minutes, garbage in equals garbage out. So we want good data to work with. So to show you that, I'm going to show you the StreamSets pipeline. This is an example of this, and I'll make sure. So basically, we've gotten some DAWS data, and we go ahead and when we trim data, that's like taking a blank. So you can spell Dennis, D-E-N-N-I-S, but sometimes you put in a space afterwards before you hit enter. That cleans this sort of stuff out. This is just a data cleansing thing, okay? Now, this is very interactive. It and to the historian, well, you'll never see this, okay? So this is a beautiful thing, okay? But for the J6 folks in the Data Center of Excellence, we're interested in getting good data quality, and this helps, okay? This cleans up the data and does that sort of activity. So the next thing is the analytics layer, and this is our partnership with JDPack in working on this production contract. The analytics layer provides a software product from Cloudera as well, known as the Data Science Workbench, and hopefully I can get to that here in just a moment. And so this is just a view into it real quick. There's a lot of Python code and R code that you can do for this. These are for the analytical community. I will show you this one feature, though, is that you can run virtual CPUs. So sitting at this laptop here, in the Stiller Auditorium, I could run, a very powerful parallel processor environment to do analytical work. This is a great capability that is being added to JDPack today. So this is one of the good things about this. The other thing that I wanted to say about Cloudera and StreamSets, it's cloud agnostic. So we had a question earlier, sir, that we can basically pull and go to another. We could go to Microsoft Azure pretty easily. There will be some work. Would it be big data, sprint to big data, super light, I would call it, sir. Okay, there'd be some work, but it wouldn't be very much. All right. And then the third layer that I want to show is this
This is where the community here in Transcom will get involved with big data. It's these user interfaces. There's, dashboards for senior decision makers, planners and executors in 5.4 will be able to see different things, and the analysts and data scientists. And I want to show one last product, and this is from the RShiny dashboard. This is what you're going to see as a user, okay, when you're going to be using big data in the future. Right now we only have 4 different things listed on here. There'll be 400 of these things listed on here when big data is mature. Okay, you'll be able to deep dive into a particular area of expertise. So for instance, aerial refueling, and I'm just going to show you the cover page. Hopefully it will come up relatively quickly with the internet. It's very slow. Here we go. So this is a tanker match sort of chart. It shows different things. I'm not going to get into the great levels of detail, but this, if you were working up on the GOC floor and wanted to know, what the tanker matches looked like on a particular day to provide status to senior leadership, this is something you could dive into. This is using big data. This is using the most current, complete, accurate, and timely information to give you good information to decision makers. So this picture depicts basically what we're trying to do with big data in terms of how we're integrating different software products and leveraging the cloud, which is an important aspect to this. We're trying to provide this enterprise data environment, this EDE that you'll hear us talk about all the time, that has great data quality to it. We're bringing an analytics layer, which will include machine learning and artificial intelligence in the data science workbench. You can pull in libraries of that information in there to help you do advanced analytics, as well as just a great repository of information within the cloud. So I'll let Major Schiffner give you the takeaways from our presentation.
So since we have all 5 of the initiatives here today, we wanted to show some of the overlaps between the Big Data Initiative and some of the other ones that are out there. As we already mentioned, we're dependent on the cloud. The cloud is providing the infrastructure in which the EDE rests. The other one is TMS, who's going to be speaking next, is a downstream customer of big data in our in state. The EDE will provide the authoritative data source that TMS can then reach into and pull out of. So that they get cleansed, managed, pre-staged data, and it makes their program more effective. Third, big data is laser focused on transactional data. So we're not just talking about using big data for analytics and improving decision making. We're also talking about being able to have that common data repository that all the various Transcom systems can reach into and grab, again, cleansed, pre-staged, more better organized, more readily available data. And if one system produces data, another system can use that data to operate more efficiently. And then last, as we move forward, and as you're going to hear the doc talk later on today, this is going to be yet one more of those tool sets. The EDE is going to provide yet one more tool set like the tanker refueling use case that the GOC can then use in order to do their job and their mission just a little bit more effective, again, making better and faster decisions for Transcom. With that, do we have any questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Lieutenant Commander Teeter, J54. So I think what I saw on the slides was that the data that you're working with for the POP is like a one-time ingest of 5 teras of data. In the in-state, are you looking to do like a real-time ingestion or a short cycle periodicity ingestion?
Great question. That was actually the one talking point I skipped over, but yes. So right now it is all batch data that was dumped in, a couple of waves. The intent and the long-term vision is for all of that data from all of Transcom systems to be able to get ingested in real time, both in and going out. Again, so those transactional systems can reach in, grab the data they need. To quote General Broadmeadow from our last update, I want it all and I want it now when he's talking about the data. Now there's some security implications. We can't sprint that fast right now, But that's the direction we're sprinting. That's where we're going. Great question. Did I miss anything?
So, right, you might want to include also from internal and external data sources. In other words, if we wanted to ingest weather data, we wanted to ingest social media data or news feed or any number of external data sources to integrate with Transcom data, that's a possibility as well.
So for the people out in DCS land that might not have been able to hear that, so we are talking about ingesting external data sources as well. Weather feeds is a great example. Data from the FAA is a great example. This is not going to be restricted to just Transcom organic data. It can go much bigger than that. Yes, sir.
Talk a little bit about the concept of a citizen analyst.
So there's 3 potential user bases for big data. One is the decision makers, so that you can feed information in whether it's a COP or whether it's type of a normal format. 2, you've got your deep dive analysts like Mr. John DeLapp over here from JDPAC and his team. 3, this concept of citizen analysts. Denny showed can you pull up on the workbench, there's going to be basically apps like this. And the intent is to design and build tools that a common person sitting on the GOC floor can say, I need the capability to be able to answer this question for the 8 a.m. brief every morning, and I don't want to have to do all this manual labor to do it every single time. We can build an app for that. That's kind of overly simplistic description of it, but we can build something like that into the enterprise data environment so that normal Transcom employee can tap into the big data environment and answer that question that they need to be able to answer. Great question.
Without permissions to this big data, this is all very interesting to me because I keep getting asked what are the statistics on a mission or on an operation or something. Is that something that I'll be able to get into without any permissions, or will I have to have permissions, or what? Or have we gone that far yet?
So ma'am, in the prototype, we're limiting it to people that can help us evaluate the prototype.
Right.
But when we go into production, hopefully in early FY19, that we'll be able to establish just a CAF card access. Now, we will have an active directory where we'll limit people to different sorts of things. Okay?
Right, because not everything is a need to know.
Right. Not everybody's going to be able to see everything all the time. Okay. So, but there will be kind of a clearinghouse as to what different permissions or what different levels of access that you'll be able to gain access to.
And who will decide permissions?
TBD, but probably
Okay.
somebody adjacent.
Okay.
There's going to be a couple of governance bodies for data that might take that on.
Okay. We can take that note, sir. Yeah.
Thank you.
Another good question. Oh, yes, sir.
I may have missed it right in the last lecture, but is there going to be an ad hoc ability for a citizen analyst to build their own type of reports, or is it all going to be dependent on someone building it for them?
So the amount of knowledge and skill that would go into building what's behind these is pretty extensive. It's pretty massive. We've got data scientists, we've got data operations experts, we've got data managers. I mean, there is a large, how many people on your team total?
There are about 30 of us.
30 people that are just helping to build the prototype, and a lot of that work goes into each one of these. So,
If the citizen analyst has the capability to do that, what would stop them?
Nothing would
I would
stop.
say
There you go.
for reports and dashboards, that analysts would be doing that, for that type of stuff. So, like what we're doing with business intelligence environment, building dashboards, reports, anybody would be able to do that.
So Dave and I are the subject matter experts that we sit down with the users. We sit down with the users and we're kind of the translators between our 12-pound brain data scientists that are out there getting the right data. First, we go through the process, we figure out what data needs to be in the lake or in the data layer, and then we help them and sit down and figure out what the process is, their inputs, outputs, and what data they should be analyzing to provide them with the answers that they're going to want for the future. By having that subject matter expertise sit down with the individual user, the process allows them to build future queries, dashboards, whatever it is that that individual or that organization needs to deliver answers for them in the future. Whether it's a senior leader that needs a dashboard that says, hey, today these are the 4 hot spots. Have you talked to your leadership, your senior leaders, and figure out what are they doing about it? That's the General Lyons version. The planner executor is going to be able to look at that and build some of the stuff will be automated. The tankermatch.com is this kind of look that looks at, once a tanker mission is not validated, it goes into a non-support status. Now we have a bunch of requests, and we have a bunch of tankers that aren't assigned to this actual refueling, and we match them together, kind of like Match.com does. That's what that intent is, and to find the best, most efficient way. If we get 1, 2, 5 more tanker missions a day, that increases readiness for the entire enterprise. So sitting down and understanding with the user themselves to figure out the best way to deliver for them is some of the great benefit of what this is going towards. It's giving you access to data that in the past, if you asked an analyst to do something for you, they had to go find that data. They had to go track it down. Now it's going to be readily available, and it's going to make their job that much better to do the ad hoc type analytics. So that's the future. That's what production hopefully will bring.
Yeah, so I guess to put a bow on your question and answer it, it depends. Depending on the complexity of the question that you're asking, dependent upon whether you can do that with these citizen analyst tool sets or whether you need a full-blown production type app like what Mr. Mallitz is talking about, then it depends.
Are you interested in ingesting data that's outside of your proof of principle now, like DHS data sets, other data sets that I can make available to you, or just wait until it goes to production?
So we have 15 days left on the proof of principle. One of the caveats of the proof of principle is it cannot be used for operational purposes, but we are always interested in getting as much data as we can, both to inform that proof of principle. So if you've got something, you can talk with us afterwards, and if we can get it done in the next 15 days, that's a great target. Moving forward, once we have a follow-on contract and go into the next step, the next phase of Sprint to Big Data, we are absolutely interested in that. Again, General Broadmeadow, I want it all, I want it now. I think we're getting real close to time. Somebody just...
Can you speak to the classification? Because, you're aggregating everything. Can you speak to that?
Okay. So this EDE comes with we're currently on an IATT, and to move into production, we've got to get an ATO, which comes with all sorts of different security constraints and requirements that we have to have in place in order to protect them. We're currently rated at IL4. We have plans to go to IL5 and then IL6. And once... Did I get your answer, or do you want me to keep going down that rabbit hole?
Well, the data call was limited to unclassified, no higher than FOUO, and no PII.
That's what we've got currently in the prototype. The follow-on production vehicle will have classified data once the cloud has the infrastructure for us to be able to move into it, once we have the ATO.
You're working in the unclassified environment, say IL5.
Yeah.
Right, and the aggregation of some of your data to answer one of these questions now may bring you up to a classified level. How are we going to handle that? Right. So, I think the answer.
Great question.
Awesome question, we will. But, others have.
There's already policy guidance out there to help us answer that question,
Others have charted
just like any other environment.
some good answers to that.
Okay, I think it's time for us to move on.
Thank you. Good morning. My name's Gary Price. I'm part of the J3. I'm also on the TMS project team, and I currently serve as the OCM and .mil PFP lead for that. And what I'd like to do today is just take the next few minutes, kind of catch you up on the TMS initiative and where we are today. This is one of my, oops, jumped ahead of myself. This is one of my favorite slides. Basically, this shows that the JDE currently uses over 120 systems to move passengers and cargo across the spectrum. We're going to get a better way to do that, and that way is the TMS. It's going to help us transform the way we truly deploy and sustain the forces in the joint community. We've started a prototype, which started in March. It's going to be a 2-year adventure we're going to go on, and there's going to be 4 phases to that, which I'll go over just a little bit more a little later. And it's going to help us transform our current processes as we know them today. That's why as you look at this, you see the current state on your left shows a lot of lines, a lot of language. The right is a little more fluid, and that's what we hope to get to with the TMS. We hope to be able to integrate all these systems, all these processes into a little bit more fluid process to help everyone. And we see the JDE eventually using the TMS as a primary system. These are a few of the things that the TMS offers. This is a very holistic macro view, but first one I'll cover is contract management. This is going to help our commercial industry partners truly tie in to what we do. It's going to help them because there is something that SAP offers. It's a collaboration portal, and we're learning as we go, but this is going to be something that's going to allow your trucking companies, the rail companies, the maritime companies to come into the TMS, and when we do our bidding and different things and we tender out things, that's going to help them be inside the same system we're using. So there won't be that, as everybody quotes it, a swivel chair. I want to be at this monitor doing one thing and swivel over and do it at this one. We hope the TMS is going to make it fluid. Everybody will be in the same system, and that helps all of us as we go along. Next is order management. This is where there are some terms that we're learning as we go as well. There's things called forwarding orders, freight bookings, freight orders. Those are SAP terms, but they're also terms that we all understand. So that's where we're going to do all the order management. This is where all the bids will be done. You'll also be able to do automatic and manual tendering in this order management. And then there's transportation planning. This is basically what it means. You're going to be able to do manual and automated planning. Now the SAP tool, the TM, is able to do a lot of things on its own that we tell it to go ahead and do. We're going to set up certain exceptions and things like this. It says if it meets this criteria, go ahead and do it. So we're talking automatic bookings, which is kind of exciting. But there will be that ability to do ad hoc and manual bookings as well, because we all know everything isn't exactly right when it does it the first time. But for the most part, we are going to allow it to do a lot of the bookings for us. And then there's transportation execution. Once again, we'll be executing all the orders and everything that we put in. And some of the highlights here is you have that manual and automated method here as well. But this is also going to give us status visibility. I'm not really talking ITV as in transit visibility, but also status visibility. I believe SAP calls them event management. It'll let you know what the last status was, as well as the in-transit visibility piece of that as well. And it's also going to be coded to accept and talk dangerous goods, which is something we are working on right now, and that'll be a huge thing to be able to talk dangerous goods language in this system as well. And the last one, and the really big one to some people, is freight settlement. Everybody knows we're under the microscope, the whole department is, on audit compliance. Freight settlement and the financial piece is being got after just as much as everything else in this TMS. We have J8 folks working on the team, just as long as, along with other J54 and J3 folks. So the financial piece is being taken just as serious as the cargo movement piece itself. And it's going to allow them, and also does allow you a thing, it's transportation charge calculation. We all know about the best service to the government. We have to go sometimes lowest bidder, but it's also going to allow you to put in your order, look at it, and do a best cost option, which is what we all like to have anyway. Next, you'll notice at the top, we have a key date there, and I mentioned those 4 rollout phases, if you will, for this prototype, and they're labeled 1.1 through 1.4. 1.1 is a data-only search, which ties into the other big initiatives. We're also testing the TMS to see, will all the data go through? What does the data look like? Which of our legacy systems won't talk to the TM in its current state? The other date you see up there, our capability 1.2, this is a big one for all of us, so we get excited. This is when we go live. We intend to go live 1 May 2019, and when I say go live, that's the metaphoric switch will be turned on. The TM will be live at that point. We will process and move cargo in the TMS. And the first phase of that is going to be from CONUS to Hawaii. And then to go ahead and let you know, the 1.3 would go to Japan, and then the rest of the PACOM AOR is the fourth phase of that. But the next key date for us, like I said, is the 1 May, and I kind of wanted to show you how do we get there. Now, the integrators that we've hired on and brought this, we've all heard the term, but there's a thing we're doing called blueprinting. And it's not quite the schematic to draw in a house, but it is blueprinting. What we do is we have about 60 to 80 folks in a room from all your components. All the services are in there. We've got transportation, logistics, financial experts. We've even brought in industry on some of the days to help us. And with the help of the integrator, they're the SAP experts, they walk us through each box, each screen, each level of this SAP TM, and all the while we're listening to all those SMEs, because we aren't it. We're there to facilitate and help. If they have a requirement, we're putting it in a tool that also is offered in SAP. And we're tracking down, I think we're up over 100 and some requirements to date that have to be tested, looked at, and see, is this the best fit? So when we say blueprinting, it literally is kind of sitting down and drawing a map of this whole SAP to make sure it works for what we have to offer. And you'll see some key dates there. We finished what's considered global blueprinting, and that was more of a holistic macro view of the whole JDDE. It's just getting this SAP TM right to fit our system, our operations as they are now. And next we will go into what's called Capability 1.2 blueprinting, and that's 18 September to 1 November. That's when we're going to bring in those folks in the CONUS, the sites that have been identified, and folks from HICM and Hawaii to include the ports. We're going to look at air, land, and sea. We're going to bring all those folks in and say, let's get more granular now. Let's get down a few more levels and see, are we missing something? You know, what do you have to do day to day to do your operations? And then we will start to build out the TM and even more. But we will go through that process from start to finish once again. And then there's the freight settlement blueprinting. And like I said, freight settlement is very important. It's finance. There's going to be a blueprinting session that focuses just on finance. And our J8 in-house residents, Mr. Pete Kavornik that's on our team, he will run that blueprinting session. And he will bring in all the financial experts, and they really want to get after this system if it's going to help them just as much as it's going to help us for that, true visibility on billing and stuff like that. And we also are working with the integrator to build 2 training programs. Because we all know, just like me, I doubt anyone in this room has really been in the SAP TM much. It's still foreign to some of us. We're getting in there. We're learning as much as we can as we go. So the first one, we're calling it Train the Trainer Boot Camp. And these are going to be government personnel, preferably active duty. And what they're going to do is they're going to go through about a 5-day course, and they're going to learn how to be trainers. And then we will move on to what's called end user training. They will then go out, and you see the dates right now are set up for the first. We've got about 80 folks that have been identified as end users for 1.1. We're going to run them through the course. Those are 5 one-day sessions for end user. It's just basically a TMS 101 overview of the SAP platform. But the intention is to have in-house, have our own government DoD people teach other government people. So we don't need to hire out, have an integrator do that. They're going to get us started, and then the intention is to take over that completely once this thing comes online. I'm going to keep this short and sweet, but as I wrap up, though, there are a few things. These are 3 key words that we like to bring the TMS. We feel it really encapsulates everything. First, you have integration, and that's the integration of global mobility ops as a whole. That's really what we're here for. We're trying to integrate as much as we can. Transparency has been tied to the billing and cost. Transparency of that financial piece that a lot of people don't get to see in your current systems. And then finally is the visibility. As the commander's statement was, and the commander's intent is to have end-to-end visibility of every piece of passenger, every piece of cargo and passenger that moves through the DoD. Now we know this technology works. The commercial industries have been using it for years. It's time for us to come on board, and the question isn't really, is it going to work for us? It's how much are we willing to bend and adapt to make it work for us. And we know this is bold change that's coming. But we ask everyone to help us as we go along. If you have questions, that's why we put the website at the bottom. We're working on it. I just met with the J6 web shop last week, and we're tweaking the website as we go. We provide feedback on it, if you will. Go on it and say, hey, I'd like to see this or that. We're open to suggestions. And these are exciting times, and I'm happy to be on the team, and thank you for your time. Open the floor to any questions. And you're letting me off easy. Okay, I can turn it over to Colonel Lonsborough.
Hey, good morning. I'm Colonel Ralph Lonsborough. I'm the chief of the Personal Property Division in J4. My fabulous assistant back here in the corner is Mr. Danny Martinez. He's the branch chief for the business process inside of the division. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about the new system that we're creating. For those of you wearing the uniform, and probably for a lot of the DoD civilians who aren't, you've maybe moved a few times in your life. We have a system called the Defense Personal Property System. It is, it's getting old. It's a little bit clunky. It's got 16 different commercial off-the-shelf programs inside of it, all tied together, which makes it very difficult to upgrade, to keep secure, and especially to make improvements for users actually moving on a yearly basis. So with all of that, we decided to put the current system into a security and stability kind of moving forward. So we're really focused on security with that, and we decided to go ahead with the new system that's modern, in the cloud, agile production, all that kind of stuff, modern to kind of get after making the relocation better for the service members. So I'm going to kind of demo today what the system's looking like right now. I don't know if you can.
So can we switch it back to?
There we go.
It was taking forever.
Yeah. So the first thing we did with this new system is we created a new login. So with the old system, you had to go in to a system called ETA that SCDC runs. It was kind of difficult. It made it very hard to have your spouse do it. So, and then, after a couple years, after 90 days, all your stuff expired. So the next time you went in to use the system, you had to get a new login. You had to go through all that rigmarole, right? It also tied us in with another system and just made it one more opportunity for things to go south and not function inside of the system. So the first thing we did is we went into login.gov, which is the new GSA two-factor authentication tool that they use. So when you come into this new system, you'll create a login.gov account, same account that you can use for USA Jobs and a bunch of other government functions that are out there. So go ahead, Danny. I'll have Danny log in. We also, one of the reasons with doing a whole new system is really wanting to get where customers live today too, which is on their cell phones and their personal devices. So there's a lot of things you can do with the newer system that we were just never going to get to with the old system. Trying to put any of that kind of stuff on a personal device was just a bridge too far. So as you go in, one of the things you have to do with this new login, which Danny just got, was an email that also went to his cool watch on his arm there, which sent him the one-time security code to do the two-factor authentication to get into the system. So we really want to have a lot more modern, when you go in, when you have things that are happening, you actually get an email, you get something on your phone, a text message that says, hey, this happened in the system, go in and upgrade or update whatever you need to do. So you come into the new system, which is now called MyMove, which is a little bit confusing, So you can go into move.mil, which is our official DoD website, which kind of has all the information for your moves. You can link into MyMove through that, or you can actually just go into my.move.mil. So Danny's going through, kind of putting in some basic information, struggling with some basic information here. I think it takes any numbers, Danny.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a state. So what we're doing right here is basically a staging site. It's got to be 10 digits, though. Okay. Yep. So this is basically a staging site, so we can demo and we can play with the system. It mimics what's actually out there. So where we're at right now with this, we put a contract in place back in December. We started building the system in January. We actually rolled it out live with a handful of personally procured moves in June. which was pretty quick. We're still kind of working through finishing up the end pieces of those 10 moves with the PPMs, which is the old Diddy moves for those of you that aren't familiar with the new terminology. What we're looking to do, yep, go ahead. What we're looking to do moving forward is we're going to take that to scale here pretty soon with the Air Force and the Marines, and we're going to bring in the Army and Navy soon afterwards on the PPM piece. We're looking to do the actual household goods piece starting again in October with 10 moves initially, and then we'll bring that up to scale too. So we're looking to actually move quite a few people with this system by next peak season, and that'll keep expanding really from October all the way through the peak season. So some of this isn't too exciting. You can kind of, it's basic information. So then you go in. We're not quite there yet, but we are working with the services to automatically import orders. So instead of having to go in and scan like you do now, and then update your order or put your orders into the system that way, you can either one, take a picture with your iPhone and upload your orders that way. And then eventually, as we're working with the services, we're going to try and get it so all the key pieces of data from your orders when they're generated will actually feed into the system, and you'll get an email that says, hey, your orders have been created and put into the personal property system, and you can go in and now set up your move. We're a little ways away from that because obviously each service has their own different way of doing orders. The Army generates them in 160 different locations. So there's a lot of things to work through on that, but that's where we're headed eventually. So Danny's moving from Corpus Christi and create some fake addresses. You can probably just put in a couple words. That's probably all we need. So I would have filled out some of this for you ahead of time, but kind of the way the system's set up, once you put it in, you have to keep going, or you got to start over with the new move anyway. So eventually, in the real system, it'll keep your data in there, and you should just be able to go in and put in the new locations. And actually, once the orders are automated, it'll do it for you. The other thing with this, with the two-factor authentication, we wanted to make it easier. One of the things that does is if your spouse wants to set up, if you want to hand over your login and password to your spouse, to have her go in and actually set up the move and what you want done, or a family member, you can have somebody else actually do this stuff for you easier than you can with the current system. So what this is going to show is, what this system is showing right now is really how we're doing the personally procured moves. The household good moves are going to work the same way. It'll be the same system. We just don't have that link live yet because we're still working on the final pieces of the household good stuff. But what this will show you is when you put in the dates that you want to move, it will also show you windows, and eventually it'll show you if your dates are available or unavailable. But it'll show you how many days it takes to pack your stuff, estimated packing dates, and then when you should expect the stuff on the other end, and how long it'll take to unpack. So at this point, we didn't bring something, but we could demo, you could take a picture of your orders right here, click on it, and it'll upload it. Or you can do it that way. Yeah, just upload something. So this feature, especially for me, it's very frustrating at times when you got to go find a scanner, go find other things to put all that stuff in the DPS system and set up your move. So we probably should have put a picture in there. It's a lot quicker than maybe the file you just uploaded. Yeah. And if you guys have any questions as we're going through this, I'd be happy to answer them.
wasn't enabled there. What's the concept of being able to text the member back if they now put your cell phone as a text is the optimal method?
When you're in there, I mean, so one, like you set up your move, right? So how do you know that it went through, somebody's actually looking at your stuff, it's actually getting forwarded to the personal property shipping offices to get stuff booked? That's what the text and the email message is. So you can click, you can get it either way, you can get it both ways. So it'll tell you your stuff was uploaded, it was submitted, and it went to the shipping office. You should expect a message back in 5 days, right? Okay. All right, so we got all that set up. Now you can go in and schedule your move. So like I said, the PPM is really the piece that's working right now, but eventually you'll be able to set up a household good move, a PPM move, or what most people do is a combination, right? So most people will set up have a mover come in and move, the vast majority of their stuff, but they got a pickup truck and a trailer, or just a truck or a car or whatever. They got some certain stuff they want to move themselves. You can set up both on this. Let's go next, Danny. It also kind of gives you the pros and cons of the different types of moves. We're really trying to make this, we're not trying to get all the counselors out of the system, but we are trying to make it, if you've done this a couple times and you understand how the movement process works, you should be able to go through this fairly easily and not have to worry about actually going and seeing a counselor unless you want to. So there's been some talk about that. My personal feeling on that is the way the household good industry is set up. Your stuff may actually come screaming past Scott Air Force Base on its way to Kansas to drop off 2 loads, pick up another one, and drop it off in time before the RDD here, which I think will cause some confusion because they're very, it's moving vans, so they're kind of all over the place. So we're talking about that. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing from an information standpoint. Yeah.
So, for example, I just came from overseas in the UK.
Yep.
Seeing the shipments coming across the water would be beneficial to know when it gets to the country. Would that be added?
So we have talked about putting in, maybe not actually showing a map where your stuff is, but actually, your stuff arrived at the port, your stuff left the port, your stuff arrived in the U.S. at the port, that kind of information. We've talked about doing that, yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. We can talk about that later if you want. So Danny put in the zip codes, if you can go next. You can now put in how much stuff you're doing. Just go with the moving truck. There you go. I think you had to click next again. Oh, there you go. So you can then put in, so it'll tell you what your weight, what your authorized weight is. You can put in roughly where you think your weight is. What this does is it gives you a small range of what your incentive actually is. So if you're going to get a rental truck, there's different ways you can do there's all kinds of ways you can do a PPM. This kind of gives you an idea of some of the incentive you're going to get back, so you know what you want to do. It also gives you some information on all that. So finally, you get all your moves set up. You got the PPM set up in this case. Household goods will look very similar. Go through and review everything. Now, here's a new feature we put into this as well. So you can actually type in your name. Because of the nature of what we do, legally this is sufficient to kind of say that, I've reviewed what I'm doing and I'm submitting this move, which makes life easier as well. What you used to have to do in the past was print out a couple of different forms, sign them, scan them again, upload them back in the system. And there you go, success. Am I missing something, Danny, at the end here?
I could show the packet.
So again, some of this, is gee whiz, right? You go in and put in your information just like you do anywhere else. What really makes it better, though, is the fact that, there's a lot easier ways to it links you back into different information. So if you're willing to take a few minutes to go through your move and set it up, this gives you a lot easier information, better access.
And this is the packet that they can finance.
Right. So one of the things I'll say with this new system that, we're actually building this, in flight. I think it took 5 years to get the new system put together, fielded, and then you can say we've been constantly trying to get it, 100% ever since. We're actually building this system in flight, and we're re-engineering it while we're flying it, which causes, it causes some delays on a few things, but I think overall we're going to have a much better system. So like the invoicing piece, as TMS was mentioning, it's a huge piece, right? Getting people paid, getting individuals paid for their PPMs, getting the industry paid for the actual moves they're doing. We're working through all that. We've kind of streamlined a lot of that with the third-party payment system and Syncada. So there's a lot of good things that are happening that modernize this entire program. So yeah, it's looking like that's going to bog down on us with the Wi-Fi connection. So I'll just take, is there any further questions?
One question.
Oh, sorry.
Looks pretty good for those of us who've moved countless times. You're still going to do all the kind of things for first-term soldiers and airmen who don't understand duties.
Yeah, we don't expect, we're not trying to get rid of the counselors. What we are trying to do is make this system easier for the average person. So if you don't need a counselor, that's great. That gives us a few more hours out there at the installation level to maybe do some QA, some QC inspections, different things, right? Hopefully it frees up some manpower. But we're not, especially for the first-time movers or the first couple-time movers, we're not trying to, and international moves are much more difficult. So we're not trying to get rid of any of that, but we are trying to make it a lot more intuitive for the individual. So when this system goes live, it'll be the carriers putting in their information. So they'll have the ability to say they're available or not available, right? Just like they do in the current system. The current system, the individual can't see that. The personal property shipping offices doing the bookings can. Where we run into problems, especially in this whole program, is during the summer. We move 154,000 people in a 14-week stretch. And the reality is that it's more people than the system can take, right? So the dates that people want aren't always available. They don't know that. Getting that feedback loop back and forth with them is important. It's hard to do with the current system. We're hoping that will fix some of this, because you'll be able to see right up front, and then you can adjust your dates as they are available. Now, that's not going to make you happy if you absolutely wanted to move on 28 June and it's not available, but at least you'll know that. All right, I think I'm going to turn it over to Gok.
Hello, I'm Ben. I'm one of the common people that work on the Gok floor, as Major Schiffner annotated and alluded to. So I'm the last one. If you guys need to stand up and stretch, just go ahead. I'm Colonel Ben Robbins. I'm the J33 Chief of Current Operations. That's my day job. My night job, my other hat, is I chair the Global Ops Center Working Group, and that is the cross-directorate group that is charged with building out the Global Operations Center. This is, I think, the third tech talk. This one's going to focus on one of our tools, but overall, if you have questions about the Gok, there's a nice display in the lobby, but we've moved from the Fusion Center, which is a sharing, collaborative environment, to a Global Operations Center. It's in line with the Joint Doctrine, Joint Pub 3, where you plan, assess, monitor, and it's a decision-making apparatus to tee up command and control for the commander. So that is what the Global Operations Center is. There are 5 major lines of efforts. This is one of them. The 5 lines of effort: one is the organizational change, org structure change. That's personnel and roles, responsibilities. The second line of effort is the decision-making cycle. CCIRs, SIRs, battle rhythms. The third line of effort is the common operation picture and our knowledge management. The fourth line of effort is an infrastructure change, and we've had some changes on the floor. And the fifth one is integrating with the other Transcom mission critical initiatives, specifically the big data, so I'm swimming in the lake, and the TMS as we go live on October. What you see before you is our common operating picture. This is off the Esri platform. Gets hosted right now through NGA. We're running off their backbone. This is the unclassified version. The classified version is what we really rely on. That's what's being briefed in the Cub. That's what's using a lot of our system monitoring. But I'll just give you a brief idea, and Sammy's running it in the back for us here. What you see is there's hurricanes. That has the weather app. So if you could go to the layer there, Sammy, you can unclick and declick the hurricane for me. Hurricane active, I think. That's it. All right. That's good. We'll just move on. I don't know what's going on there. There it is. You can just close the layer. I don't know why the system, it probably hasn't been refreshed in a while because we've been in the briefings. But as you can see, there are multiple data feeds. We can take live data. You can input static data. This has got the weather charts up in the left corner. We're taking NIFC, which is the National Interagency Fire Center, getting their fire data for all the Southwest and the Midwest fires. All the green little triangles, those are SDDC ships that are being ported in through ISDDC and is being translated by TGIS, if you've heard of those systems. So there is capability for live data streams. We're tied in with the Air Mobility Command to see their live aircraft should we need to do it. Working with MSC, working with the JEC to see their laydown around the world. If you hit the Health and Surveillance Explorer at the very top there, Sammy. So this is a COCOM breakdown, and it's kind of hard to see on this big screen here in the SAE. But each of those, this is from the Defense Health Agencies, and they've input their static notes. And so there are little notes. If you click on any one of the blue dots, it gives you a status in that country. So again, the three main things that we're trying to do in the GOC is increase our situational awareness, look at options for the commander, and then create decision space for him. So this is key into the first aspect of that, of creating the situational awareness picture. Go to the NOAA site, the NOAA tab up top. This is an example of what we do in the Cub. This is now our Cub version, but you can create story maps, you can create data fields, you can bring in PowerPoint slides. If you scale down the left side, you can tie this data, as we have in the classified version. If it's an underlined phrase, you can click on it and it'll zoom in and it'll highlight to the area you need to go. Just click on through that for me, Sammy. So there's the 2-day forecast. You can see the cumulative quantitative precipitation forecast. All right. And then if you hit the dashboard at the very top, this is the COP solution development, so the people that are tied into the teams that are using these capabilities, this is their way to input and provide problem sets and how we're able to track different data fields. So if there's a new COP requirement, they can input it here, and our teams can go back and start researching that. And go back over to the top left corner COP tab. We're back to the main page. Again, the unclassified version, it has a little bit more limited. We haven't invested as much time, but it is valuable for us in Defense Support of Civil Authorities, DSCA, interagency use, as you saw from the Health tab, as we start to work with our interagency partners, commercial partners, the unclassified version is key. Up on the SIPR side, and even more so on the JWIC side, this is really built out on the JWIC side. A lot more users, a lot more capability, a lot more analytics, a lot more heat mapping, which is not available yet. It's coming shortly to the SIPR and then slowly to the unclassified side. So we are waiting to, anticipating that, and we'll look forward to using that. Where we see this going is using using the big data, using the tanker movements and the sourcing of the tankers and the cargo movement, being able to import this data in here for our situational awareness picture. So we have the tools, we have the models for using the questions for the action officers on the floor, and then creating the picture with those tools on the floor to provide that situational awareness picture for the commander. That's all I have for today. This just gives you a glimpse into what we're using on the floor. Does anyone have any questions for the GOC? You're at your limit, aren't you? No, you're at your limit of questions today, aren't you? No, it's okay. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, so my question is, so you have all these nice overlays on the top, but they're coming from like kind of existing legacy data systems. Once the other initiatives are fully up and running, is it going to be pretty easy to do the re-engineering to be now pulling those data streams from the cloud environment or whatever? Does that question make sense?
No, it completely makes sense. So it depends, and most likely it depends on the language that they're using. If it's an open architecture, easily translatable language, which where most of the platforms are going, it should be. If it's a legacy system, that's where we get into issues. If it's an older, more archaic language, much more difficult. So if it's new stuff, I don't anticipate the problems of importing it and translating it. If that makes sense? Yeah.
Permissions. How do you, will anybody be allowed, be able to get into that type of database, or?
No, it's similar to data systems, the credentials search. You have to get the authorized, much like SMS. You can't access, not everybody can access every data field in SMS. You have to be added to that permissions in that users group. So there is a process when you go through to request access and get approved.
Ask you, or will you go to the J3 report box?
It is through, so this is housed, it's housed on the J3 Intel share site, and I think the unclassed one as well. I know for sure the classified version as well, but I can double back with you. Okay, yeah, so there's a button on those Intel share sites for people to hit that. Like I said, it ideally works. It's really designed to work best in Firefox. There are some issues with Firefoxes and patches, so primarily we're using it individually through Explorer. But yeah, there are permissions for different data fields. You don't get everything unless you have full access and it's been approved. That is a worry as well. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Are you bringing in feeds from other like national command centers?
Yes, we're trying. We're working through that, again, depending on their system that they're using. So I know our guys have talked to your agencies, and for instance, yes, I know that the Coast Guard, we've talked to you guys about that. Good? All right. Thank you.